welcome everyone. I hope you are all doing well. Thank you very much for joining the webinar, Monitoring the Health of Our Coastal Wetlands. I'm Doñana, the IBA officer working on wetlands for BirdLife International, for BirdLife Europe and Central Asia, and I will be chairing the session today. For your information, this webinar will be recorded, so if you prefer not to appear on the recording, feel free to turn off your camera. Before we start, I will kindly ask you to keep yourself mute during the presentation. Don't worry, we will dedicate some time later for you to ask any questions you may have. And I will kindly ask you to, if you could turn on your camera so we can take a picture all together, if it's okay. I hope you are not afraid of showing your face. We are all beautiful today. It's a beautiful day, sunny, at least in Cambridge. For the first time in all the year, we have a sunny week. Hi, Christian. You have big earphones, bigger than your face. Okay.
So, I think I'm gonna take the picture. Everyone smile. 1, 2, 3.
Nice. Thank you so much for turning your cameras. So first, we have our keynote speaker, Luis Costa from MAVA Foundation, that is here with us. Luis is in charge of the freshwater, terrestrial, and species aspects of MAVA Mediterranean program. He is a biologist by training. He joined MAVA in October 2016 with more than 25 years experience in conservation. Thank you, Luis, for being here today with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you also for the invitation for this webinar and to speak for you. Just to put the tone on this session, I hope you can hear well. Thank you also for providing me a nice background that unfortunately I can't use. We were testing and I was appearing like a ghost. And I hope this is not like a pronounce of the MAVA closing. And let me start by there. So you know that the MAVA Foundation is closing down this year. By the end of 2022, we are closing our activity. And just to say that this was announced a long time ago. And for our last strategy, we defined some outcome action plans that would may have an impact for our closing. So that's why we identified together with our traditional partner organizations what were the main threats in the Mediterranean region. And we identified coastal wetlands as one of the most threatened habitats and ecosystems. And therefore, there would be a need for investing our last funding before closing down on this topic. So what we did as a strategy was to gather the most important organizations in the region to discuss what were the main threats and the main needs for protecting coastal wetlands. We concluded about water abstraction, coastal development, and infrastructure as the most important threats to be tackled. And we starting selecting pilot sites across the region together with our partners. We also defined overarching topics and we then created a strategy for 7 years, for our last 7 years of funding to invest in these pilot sites in the region and allowing to scale up with our experience on these pilot sites. We used for this the methodology of conservation standards, also called open standards for conservation. And this requires planning and having a focus on impact and on adaptive management. For this, of course, we need a good monitoring system. We need also good indicators for showing if what everybody's doing is having an impact and how to adapt activities in order to improve and to always have this focus on impact. And therefore, we found a bit difficult to define the ultimate indicator for measuring all the success of everybody's work on coastal wetlands. And that's why we came up with this challenge of defining a global indicator for measuring the state and the health of coastal wetlands. And that's what we are discussing in this session today, looking at the methodology that was set up brilliantly by the organizations working on this outcome action plan, and what are the results and what is the current status of the wetlands that everybody in this group is working on. So I'm looking forward to seeing all the good results and hope that the work done by this partnership can be useful also for other regions and for measuring in the future steady improvement of the quality of these wetlands, hopefully. So thank you very much, and I will watch the rest of the session with a lot of interest.
Thank you, Luis. As you know, we are all involved in this MAVA project since really long ago, and we are pretty sad that you are closing, but with these big results that we have, I think that you will be happy after the session with our case studies. Before moving to the next presentation, we have prepared 2 questions for you to answer. They will appear on your screen, and you just need to select the answer, and we will see the results later. I give you a minute. So please, Naima, can you launch the questions? Thanks. Nice. $25. Okay. So I'm going to wait. No, okay, 25 answers already. I don't know if you can see the results, Naima. Are they seeing the results? I'm not sure.
Yes.
Okay. So 60% of our participants, they are currently working in any conservation project in the Mediterranean. So that's pretty nice. And for the second question, most of you think that between the 40 and 80% of the coastal wetlands has been lost in the Mediterranean since 1970 on average. And we will see the answer with Sophia's presentation later. So thank you so much for answering. Now let's have a look at the agenda. Sophia, you are sharing the screen, but we can see your notes. No, it's not working.
Yeah, just a minute.
Okay.
I'll try again.
Okay.
This is acting up. Now, super working.
Nice. Now it's working? Yeah. Okay. So Sophia will be the first one. She will introduce the Wetland Index methodology, and she's a driven conservationist with passion for protecting and restoring the natural environment and its wildlife. Working with partnership and communities. In the past 6 years, she has been leading some of the overarching MAVA coastal wetlands projects in the Mediterranean to protect these key sites for biodiversity and people. And you are not sharing your screen, Sophia.
I know. Let's try it again. Sorry for this. I think it's because of my connection.
Yeah, it can be. We can see your presentation, but not the full screen mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay, I can continue to present the people and we will see. No.
I think it works now. Okay.
Okay, next one. Okay, next speaker will be Anis Gelmami. Will present the land use land cover multi-temporal assessment. Anis is a project leader at the Research Institute for the Conservation of Mediterranean Wetlands of the Tuldubala. And he has more than 10 years of experience in implementing Earth observation-based tool for the monitoring, the conservation, and the restoration of wetland ecosystems. Next one, please. After that, we will have our case studies around the Mediterranean. And the first one will be Bojan, that will present the Ulcinj salina case. Bojan is an ornithologist working with CECIP in Montenegro since 2016. Currently, he is head of the bird research program, and he started as a volunteer involved in the monitoring of birds at the salina. And for the past 6 years, he has been conducting regular monthly monitoring of birds and surveys of breeding birds. Next one will be Elizabeth Drury, will present Buna Bojana. Liz is an Australian national with 14 years of experience in nature conservation, and she is now working at the IUCN in the Eastern Europe and Central Asia in Serbia. Octavio Infante will be the next one, presenting Doñana. Octavio is a doctor in biology from the University of Salamanca, and it's an amateur ornithologist. He's responsible for the conservation sites program at SeoBirdLife since 2005. After that, we will have 10 minutes for discussion, questions, challenges, and opportunities, and you will be able to ask any questions to the speakers. You can just write the questions during the presentations on the chat, or just open your mic and ask the questions. And after these 10 minutes, we will have our two last presenters, speakers, Mujib from Garelmela. Mujib is a nature enthusiast like many of us, and in 2006 he became a member of association Les Amis de les Oiseaux, an NGO working for the conservation of birds in their habitats, and since 2013 he's project manager at this NGO. And the last one will be Giorgio Massaro from Oristano. He has a PhD in environmental science, and it's an expert on protected areas management and coastal and marine conservation. Since 2019, he collaborates with Metsi Foundation in Sardinia. And finally, we'll have another 10 minutes for discussions and questions you may have. Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the webinar, and Sofia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anna. So yeah, my presentation will be about the methodology, and then we will hear about the different sites. But first of all, I would like to give you a little background on why we're here today. As Luis mentioned, back in 2016, Magas Foundation vision to improve the conservation status of the Mediterranean ecosystems and species created this inspirational network of organizations that are working to preserve and restore the Mediterranean wetlands. That's how this wetland-based solutions project was born, to identify the solutions, to raise awareness, and spread the best practices across the basin. As Luis said, we are focusing on 4 priority sites in Albania, Montenegro, Sardinia, and Tunisia, but we're also scaling up to Portugal, Spain, and Turkey. The Wetland Index that we are presenting today is one of the results of this project. So during the past 6 years, we've gone through some challenging times in terms of environmental protection, the global pandemic, as we all know, but we also shared some great moments in the most beautiful places in the Med. Most importantly, I think we have built this strong community that is ready to take action for the protection of these key ecosystems and their benefits for biodiversity, for people, and for nature. So now that you know the people, let's talk about the wetlands. You're now familiar with this terrible figure. Since the 70s, we've lost more than 48% of the Mediterranean wetlands. The key drivers for biodiversity loss around the wetlands are climate change, agriculture, urban development, and dams and water abstraction. Our degraded wetlands are losing their ability to purify water, control the floods, resist the drought, sustain biodiversity, and also to act as carbon sinks. So that's why improving the monitoring of the remaining wetlands was a priority for us. We had basically 5 objectives: to implement a simple, cost-effective, and replicable and sustainable method. We wanted to identify the pressures early on so we could adapt site management and tackle the threats before the impacts becomes too important. We wanted to bring wetland practitioners together and share experiences. We wanted to share our data with other Mediterranean indicators, such as the Mediterranean outlooks for wetlands, and also scale up the methodology to other wetlands. And of course, we wanted to identify restoration needs to influence the policy and decision makers. So let's start with the index. We basically, the Wetland Index allows you to score 3 main components. The first one are the pressures or the threats to the site. The second one is the state of the wetland. So you can assess it based on the species, the key trigger species, or the most important habitats. And the third one is the response. So what are the conservation actions taken at the site? Are there any management plans? Where is the protection status of the site? And based on the 3 scores, you get a final score. So what does this score mean? As you can see in the graph, the index go from -3 to +3. And ideally, the score of the state and the response, they must balance the score of the pressures to complete the good health of the site. So this scoring approach enables to compare the situation over the years and see how each of the factors are evolving over time. The monitoring requires limited resources and efforts, and this enables you to do annual assessments to study the evolution of the coastal wetland. So if we look at the first parameter, so the pressures, we basically focus on the threats, right? We follow the IUCN threat classification scheme, which is used at the international level by many organizations. So hopefully any kind of threat that is happening in your wetland will be captured under one of these categories. Within the pressures, we look at 3 aspects. The first one is the timings. So is the threat happening now? Did it happen in the past? Is it happening in the near future? We also look at the scope, sorry. So how much of the area has been affected? And also at the severity. So how bad the situation is. Is it like really insignificant, slow? Is it happening quickly? Again, if you take the 3 scores, they are compiled and you will get an average scoring to determine the impact of these pressures on the site. The second component of the wetland index is the state. This can be based on habitats or on species. So if we look at the habitats, what we do is to compare the evolution of the main habitat types thanks to the land use and cover change analysis that my colleague Anis will explain it later. But as you can see, we have a baseline from the 1990s, and then we look at the 2020 situation. So we are able to see how the built-up areas or how the agriculture or the artificial wetlands are increasing or decreasing. For the species, we focus on key bird species. We compare their populations to a reference population number. So each site can select a different reference population depending on the data that you have, depending on what is more representative for your site. So for instance, this could be when the site was designated first as a Ramsar site or as a Natura 2000 site, as a KBA. You can take this number as a reference and then compare the current population to that one. Then the last component of the wetland index is the response. So we are looking at the level of conservation designation that you have at the site. We are looking at the management plans. So do they exist? Are they being enforced? We look at the conservation actions. So this could be any kind of conservation project that is run by NGOs or local authorities. And in the end, we again do the average score of these 3 aspects, and we get to find a result for the response. So this is the final output of the wetland index, and this is what we call the fact sheets. This is like a summary where you can see in the upper part the summary of the pressures of the site. Then you have the state of the site based on habitats or species and the response. We also have in the lower part a quick analysis on the land use land cover change. And we can provide as well some site profile information about the surface, the land use, the protection status, the main species. And each year you will get this final score and you will be able to compare over the different years. And you can do this on an annual basis or every 5 years, depending on the data availability. So I would like to finalize, yes, with this message, this call to action, because most of you belong to really important organizations in the Med, small and large organizations which have had a positive impact in biodiversity and in society. So how can we use this type of data to influence the EU countries or the non-EU countries, decision makers? So as you know, in the EU countries, we have the biodiversity strategy by 2030. And on one side, the member states are preparing what we call the national pledges. So they have to identify sites to be added to their protected area network, including strict protection and also to improve the conservation status of habitats and species by 2030. They also have to prepare these national restoration plans as part of the EU Nature Restoration Law that was published yesterday. So this is a huge opportunity to restore our wetlands and rivers for people and for biodiversity. For the non-EU countries, again, there are plenty of opportunities under the CBD framework, with the Global Biodiversity Framework, all the 30 by 30 targets, and of course the UN Decade for Restoration. So my final question to you all is that can we all together assess the conservation status of the key wetlands in the Mediterranean so we can translate these results into restoration actions and put these ecosystems on a path to recovery by 2030? I don't need an answer now, but I think it would be good to discuss this at some point in the chat or if you want to jump in. So I thank you all for your attention and I give the floor to Anis. Thank you.
Thank you, Sofia. Do please stop sharing your screen. And Anis, for sure, this is the best time to act right now. Anis, yeah, perfect. Nice.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So can you hear me? Can you see my shared screen?
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Anis. Go ahead.
Okay. So I will thank you, Sofia, for this short introduction on the Wetland Index. And from my side, I will maybe focus more on the Earth observation part that is used to assess the land use land cover changes and how this assessment could feed the Wetland Index computation that Sofia explained a few minutes before. Okay, so the objective is to provide land use land cover maps for each pilot site. So this was done in the framework of this project. Assess these changes between 2 time periods. So we decided from the beginning to have a large a long-term change assessment from 1990 to 2020. And then derive spatial indicators from these maps that have been produced from satellite images and calculate some statistics regarding changes and how these statistics and numbers are used to feed the wetland index flow. So I will start maybe just by explaining the approach. No worries, I will not go into technical details, just to show you how it works and how we can implement it in an easy way for this wetland index. So let's take one example of 2 of our pilot sites, Buna National Nature Park and Ulcinj Salinas in Montenegro for the first one, and in Albania for the first one, and Montenegro for the second one. So these 2 pilot sites were selected, and we worked with the site managers for gathering the other data, including for validating some results from the satellite images. But when we had these 2 pilot sites, we decided to merge them into one one site. I will explain later why we have to merge them, just because these two pilot sites belong to the same sub-catchment or river, sub-river basin. So we decided to have only one map covering the two sites. But of course, all the indicators and the statistics could be derived for each pilot site individually. And the processing integrates time series. What we call time series is different images covering different seasons. So we, for example, for 2020, we have been working with Sentinel images. All the data are freely available. I forgot to mention it. So all the data that we have used for the Wetland Index are freely available, at least for the satellite images. So here you have an example of a time series of 2020 covering the whole site of the Buna and Ulcinj salinas. And then we process these images. We do what we call a segmentation and the classification. So this is the remote sensing processing approaches that exist, and maybe some of you knows how it works. I would just mention the classification nomenclature that we have used. It's a hybrid nomenclature or a hybrid classification system combining Korean land cover classification with the Ramsar definition. So why we have used this classification is the best classification system for us to better integrate the wetland definition according to Ramsar. So this is why we have used this classification system for the image processing. So this is one example of a resulting map after the processing and the post-processing. And then to make the link with the Wetland Index, as the Wetland Index uses a specific nomenclature system, which is based on the IBA definition of habitat and land use. So we had to crosswalk between the two nomenclatures and to find the correspondence of the classes. So that this was not an easy task to do, because as you can imagine, some classes that we can identify in our classification system could belong to two or more than two classes in the IBA habitat definition. So we did it from the beginning, and we provide a crosswalk table between the two classification systems. Like, for example, for coastal lagoons that we detect from satellite, we can assign them to two different classes in the habitat, in the IBA habitat definition, according, of course, to the site specificities, etc. And we can find this for all the different classes. So this is for the results that we have derived from satellite images. Now, how we can feed the Wetland Index fact sheet. This is another example for another pilot site where we have produced these maps, which is the Orestano Gulf Wetland Complex. So we provided two for each pilot site. We provided two maps, one for 1919 derived from Landsat TM satellite images, and the other one for covering 2020 derived from Sentinel-2 images. So from the maps, we can integrate, or we can derive, or calculate indicators like change indicators. So we merge the classes into aggregated classes, like, for example, built-up areas, agriculture, crops, natural drylands, natural wetlands, artificial wetlands, and marine habitats. So from these superclasses, we tried to assess the changes and to see how these indicators are changing over time. And then from the detailed classification, as I mentioned before, we can calculate the evolution and the trend for the habitat classes defined in the IBA that are used for Wetland Index fact sheet. So as you can see here in this table, you have on the left side the habitat definitions used for the Wetland Index fact sheet, and also the threats that are defined in the Wetland Index. So based on that, we fill the table with the different numbers from 1990 and 2020, and we can see the changes, if it's regressing, if it's progressing, increasing or decreasing, if the habitat is converted into which kind of land use are they converted, etc. So all these indicators are used to feed and to fill the wetland index form. And by the end, we have the classification and the wetland index fed with all these indicators. So we did it for 7 pilot sites so far. We started with 5 pilot sites, and then we have added 2 others in different countries, and now we are processing the data for 4 additional pilot sites: Albufera de Valencia, Camargue, Doñana, and Ebro Delta in Spain. And at the end, we will provide also most of this information that I have explained here derived from satellite images for more than 320 sites all over the Mediterranean Sea. And as you can see, most of the sites are coastal, but some of them are not coastal and are inland sites. So just to say that this approach could be used for coastal wetlands, but also for all the other wetlands. And I think that the wetland index in general could be implemented for any wetlands, not only for coastal wetlands, even if in the framework of this project, we have been working mainly on coastal wetlands. So thank you for your attention. And if you have questions, please go ahead.
Thank you, Anis. Great presentation. I thank you for your job with our case studies. Next one is Bojan from Ulcinj Salina, presenting this beautiful salina in Montenegro. So please share your screen.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me and see the presentation.
We can hear you and we can see your presentation, but this is not in
Full screen,
mode.
okay.
Yep.
Now
Perfect.
it's okay?
Now.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Okay, so the Ulcinj Salina basically is the wetland, also salina in the East Adriatic coast, and it is the one of the biggest salinas. It has surface about 15 square kilometers, located in very remote and very mountainous coast. So it is a part, as Anis already mentioned in his presentation, and you can see that map. It is the part of this Bojana-Buna Delta, which is even bigger than Ulcinj Salina, but Ulcinj Salina is, we can say, the core of this area, and it is very, very rich with biodiversity and especially bird species. So it is located on this Adriatic Flyway corridor, which contains also some very, very rich and important location, considering bird conservation in this corridor, which is also Skadar Lake, which is close to the Ulcinj Salina. Ulcinj Salina is protected from 2000. It is protected from 2019, but we have this very long fight, mostly 20 years, because it is one of the biggest cases of corruption in the country. So a lot of political will was necessary to make step forward and to finally protect it. But this was done with big international support, but also local fight. So it is now nature park, also Ramsar site from 2019, but also it is IBA, and it is one thing which is very, very characteristic for Ulcinj Salina in the bad way. It is that stop of salt production, which stopped in 2013, and from that point we find out that a lot of things are going down, especially for birds. The main species that represent these locations, this location is definitely colored pranticle, small tern, common tern, stone-curlew, Kentish plover, common shelduck, mostly these birds that we also find in other coastal wetlands in Mediterranean, and this is the species on which we basically find out or follow this situation with Ulcinj Salina and changes that are up there. So when it's come to pressure, we have a few of them which are very affecting this location, and most of them are hunting and collecting terrestrial animals. Hunting is something which is changing last years, especially because TZIP worked on this illegal hunting monitoring last years, but also it is now protected area and more control is put on the site. So definitely we still have some cases, because this is traditionally very important site for the local hunters, and they don't give up that easily. So livestock farming and ranching, this is something which also have some positive effects, but problem is that we have on Ulcinj salina cows and sheep. For example, cows are damaging the dikes, which are very important for the fluctuating the water around the site, but sheep are in the positive way maintain this overgrown of vegetation. Invasive species, this is something which is blue crab, and this is almost on area wider than Montenegro where it's happening, but domestic and urban wastewater is something which is connected with this pumping water from the open sea to the Ulcinj salina is something which is necessary for the birds and for salina, but also with this is coming up with this wastewater, which is also, when we say this last one, house and urban areas, which is unplanned and overgoing in the surrounding area, it is something that really affecting the Ulcinj salina. Storms and flooding, this is something which can be connected to the climate change, because we have this very dry season in one period, but in other period we have a very big rainfall. For example, in 2016 we have very big rains, and a lot of birds were abandoned the nest and stuck in the flocks and didn't nest that year. But in next year we have the dry season, so the number of breeding pairs of these represent species which like dry areas come up. When it comes to habitats, this is very important for Ulcinj salina, because without this salt water pumping in, we have these changes which are happening, and this is the overgrown of some location inside of Ulcinj salina. This is also affecting the nesting of some indicator species, some species that are really dry or small grass areas and even water. And we have this changing with more freshwater species that comes to nest in Ulcinj salina. For example, now it looks like more like Skadar Lake, but less than salina, and we can see this by the changing of the breeding bird numbers. But also in the Ulcinj salina we have all this mosaic, I can say, the birds that likes water, birds that likes dry up area, and so everything is mixed and it's fluctuating year to year depending on the situation of rainfall and pumping water. So as I already mentioned, it is protected area now. This was the big step, but even bigger step was this year that government finally, after 20 years, make decision that this is state property. This was always question, and it is very important to find out which property it is because of the future of this site. Because if you don't know who owns this site, you can managing, you can put some financial income in there. So this is all things that are necessary for Ulcinj salina that work. So management planning, the management plan is already developed and management body is in progress to establish. Now we have the foreign expert which is working on the site and he is setting up all these things that are necessary for the management of this location. Conservation actions is something that was done last year through different kind of projects, mostly because of MAVA, and this contains the putting some nests, rafts for species like terns, which are mostly affected with this not pumping and not management of water, but also the common shell duck nests and also European roller, which we follow with increase of numbers after these actions. So the future or next steps are definitely something what we need to do is this restoration of the dikes. This is something which is very problematic because last years without restoration of the dikes because the factories doesn't exist anymore. So we didn't have this restoration, and water destroyed most of them. And now it's not allowed for water to circle into Ulcinj salina in a way which is necessary to also fight this overgrown of site. And the restoration, the dikes and channels is something which is very important, and the first steps in a way to set up Ulcinj salina in the right way. Also continue of conservation action. This is something which we already do, but that is something that need to continue to do, and we are working on it. So advocacy campaign, this is also something which is always in a good way necessary to influence the local people especially, but also international community. And this is really a wind in the back. So this is something which comes up to us and help us to develop the situation which is going in the right way for now. So that's it. Also, for any question, I will be here. So thank you.
Thank you, Bojan. CECIP is doing a great job in the Ulcinj salina. Our next speaker is Liz from Doñana. So please share your screen. We're seeing your screen, but it's not in full screen mode. Now, perfect.
Good, excellent. Okay, good morning. Well, good afternoon from here, but good morning, I think, to most of you. It's really geographically appropriate to move now because the Ulcinj salina is about 1 kilometre from the edge of our site, which is the Buna River Velopoye protected landscape. Buna is in northern Albania on the border of Montenegro, and it covers right now around 22,000 hectares, although unfortunately some forming of boundaries of protected areas in Albania means they might be taking about a quarter of this protected landscape out soon. So we still hope to try to save some of that, but it's a very mixed land. We have farming, fishing, residential use and tourism in the area, which is, it's quite difficult to manage, but it has a lot of great values. It's a Ramsar site, an important plant and bird area, and a key biodiversity area. And of course, the area is a protected landscape under the IUCN category. So some of the most important wetlands in the Eastern Mediterranean are here. They have enormous populations of birds, at least 24 rare and endangered species. And many of the bird species are highly endangered. It's a great habitat node for both for permanent animal residents and also for migratory species. And as far as mammals go, there are golden jackals, dolphins, and this area, although it's coastal and in the lower reaches, it's on the fringe area of extent for brown bears and wolves, which you'd find in the mountain areas of Albania. And one value which is not always a great thing, but the beaches and woodlands attract 250,000 tourists a year, which is a really large number for this area. So that would be our number one pressure, I suppose. The tourist and urban development areas have tripled in recent years, and that it really reduces and fragments habitats. You'll see some pictures in a minute. We have increased intensity of agriculture, especially use of chemicals, which has been a big issue for pollution, and also solid waste. The infrastructure really doesn't exist for that much development in the area. So people don't also have the education and the knowledge and the infrastructure to deal with waste. So you find a lot of dumped waste in protected areas and other pollution entering the wetlands and waterways. Climate change leaves this area vulnerable not just to flooding at times and real issues from sea level rise, but also to drought at other times, leaving the farmers with less water to deal with their operations. And hunting and poaching is a particular pressure on water birds and wildlife, and that's quite unregulated in the area. So you can see this very big development, which I've also seen with my own eyes recently, is right in the middle of the protected landscape on the coast. And it's enormous, really is. Even when you photograph the protected area, you can always see this right amongst the wetlands. So you can imagine the fragmentation caused by this and the pressures from all the visitors and the infrastructure. And then we have our dumped waste, smaller developments, which still are very, very vulnerable themselves, and they cause a lot of pollution and hunters. So our site has shown as very unfavourable the conditions in 2020. And of course, this is significant, this amount of change over 10 years of built up areas. The agriculture areas themselves, as far as land use, haven't changed so much, but what is happening in those agriculture areas is a big issue. The distribution of the different types of natural areas is similar, but the quality has reduced. As far as our species, one big issue we have is there's not a lot of specific species monitoring in Boonah. We have a bird survey, a census every year, but even the results of this bird census can fluctuate because we don't know whether the weather might have been a bit different at that, even though it's done at the same time. There could be some seasonal conditions. It could be that the weather conditions on the days of monitoring affect the numbers of birds that show themselves to the viewers. And also some of our indicator species have shown a steady to steep decline, and these species like Eurasian coot should be quite viewable in a bird census. So although the data is not so clear and we don't have too many years of data, it still shows some kind of decline. Our response to this through the Boonah project and also with the protected area managers in the area was to review the management plan, which has been completed this year. The management plan was developed in 2016, and it was mostly done from an external provider. Probably not as much input as we should have had from the authorities themselves who manage the site. So a lot of the action plan has not been completed as it's written in the plan, but this review really focused on the management committee and the protected areas authority who managed the area being involved and understanding what they wanted to achieve and what they can achieve with the resources they have. We've also really focused on capacity building for authorities, local farmers, businesses and residents in the area. So very more technical capacity building for our authorities to help them with monitoring, with management of the area and with governance. And with our local small grant program, we've tried to use this as a pilot so we can shift behaviour and give people an opportunity to develop something more sustainable, to change their practices a little bit. So I suppose our site score of 0 means that we sort of have a net nothing, but it could very well be that the input into conservation across the site has been outweighed by this intensive development. And it could also be that we don't have a lot of years of data. So if you want to see change from conservation action, it's going to take many years. One response to this is that we're going to have an external expert to run this wetland index assessment again this year, but also then come back and try to train the authorities to be able to run this wetland index as their own form of monitoring for the protected landscape into the future. We might have to modify a little bit so it's not so technical, but certainly they can use the bird data because the bird data is provided every year. They can also get land use data, and then they can have a look at the habitats and see how they're changing, what quality there is. Our specific actions through our grant program have involved sustainable tourism, especially some small initiatives which give opportunities for people to travel to Buna and experience the nature instead of experiencing drinking coffee on the beach, because they have this very big lounge chairs, umbrellas, this sort of holiday culture there, but it's huge, and there are so many other things to see in Buna that essentially the protected landscape and the natural values get ignored a little. So we've supported some initiatives to give people more opportunity to see the nature. We've done direct restoration from our grantees in 3 different habitats, including wetlands, waterways, and inside the forest. Improves sustainability through agriculture, mostly to do with water abstraction. And we've run a really detailed capacity analysis for the land managers to see what's missing from their ability to manage the site and improve its condition. For the rest of this year, until the end of the project, we will run this additional species and habitat monitoring to better inform the Wetland Index and to give an example of what should be done in the future for monitoring. And also we will complete this development program for authorities, civil society organisations, and the agricultural community. Thank you.
Thank you, Liz. Incredible, that water park in the middle of the protected area. Next speaker is Octavio, that will be presenting Doñana, a hot spot for discussions now in Spain. So thank you, Octavio, for being here. Can you share your screen? Can you speak just to check that your micro is working? It's not. Just 2 seconds, because he knows how to.
Now it's okay.
Now, yeah, thanks.
Now, can you see my screen?
No.
Not yet. Okay.
Now. Perfect.
So, no, don't worry. Let me know. Now it's okay?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So first I would like to thank to MABA Foundation for this opportunity, and Luis Costa, of course. And I would like to thanks to the BirdLife girls, Sofia and Joanna and Sofia, for your excellent work on this. So I'm going to present the Doñana case study following the methodology Sofia presented before. Doñana is situated on the southwestern in Spain. Yeah, the area of this site is greater than 260,000 hectares. We are talking about a very large site to be managed properly. This is a big problem for this site. And the main land use, you can see, is agriculture, livestock, hunting and fishing, outside of the national park, of course, and selfish farming. This is the main land uses, but Doñana has a lot of more. And Doñana has been designated by the vast majority of the figures of protection we have in Spain, both from the European and Spanish legislation. As you can see, Doñana is national and natural park. It's an SPA-SCAC as Natural 2000 network. It's a Ramsar site. It's an important bird and biodiversity area, IBA. It's a World Heritage Site and UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. So Doñana is everything regarding the protection. And we have selected this bird species for the main use of the salt marshes. But as we all know, Doñana has important population of other bird species that make it special. For example, Spanish imperial eagle. But this species we selected is regarding the salt marshes. For example, this species are litter tern with 22 breeding pairs, Kentish plover with 12 breeding pairs, black-winged steel with 93 breeding pairs, marble duck 15 breeding pairs, slender bill gull, black-head gull, avocet. There's plenty of waders in Doñana. Regarding the pressures we have in Doñana, despite of Doñana is a national park and natural park, as I said before, Doñana has a large number of impacts, many of which produce great effects on habitat and species. And here we have the main ones: overexploitation of water of agriculture. This is Doñana has a lot of problem with the water, fertilizer and pesticide runoff, changes in the use of agriculture ponds, opportunistic predators as wild pig or, for example, or fox, overgrazing and trampling, and of course climate change and tourism and urbanisms. Doñana has a lot of problems, a lot of pressures. And you can see in this in the graph, we can observe the evolution of the threats. The very high category appears in the column corresponding to 2020. And this is the main difference regarding between 2007 and 2020. And the score for the pressures was very high. Regarding the state, we have only taken into account the species, not the habitat, because we don't have the data yet. And for the species, as you can see, although the status was already unfavorable in 2007, in 2020, there is no doubt of the worsening, where all the species analyzed are in a very, all of them are in a very unfavorable conservation status, as you can see in the figures. So this is a very, very important result for this, at least for this species. And the score for the state was very unfavorable, of course. Regarding the response, the different designation, the special conservation area has only been declared in 2012. So in 2007, Doñana was designated as National and Natural Park, SPA, XCI, Ramsar Site, World Heritage Site, and UNESCO Biosphere Reserve. And in 2020, Doñana was designated as SAC in 2012. Regarding management planning, the National Natural Park, the management plan of the National Natural Park were updated. So this is the only difference between these years, and no difference between the years regarding the conservation action have remained the same. Doñana is a well-known site with great biodiversity, which has led many entities and organizations and NGOs to work for its conservation. So it's plenty of conservation action in Doñana. And here we can see the final score, taking into account pressure, status, and conservation response, as Sofia told us before. The increase in pressure, despite the maintenance of the conservation response and the different management plans, has caused the 2020 Wetland Index to be -1. So this is the big difference. So Doñana is improving regarding the species following the Wetland Index score. And for Shepherd Life, the next steps could be important to repeat this exercise during the following years to know the trends. This is important, and the methodology is quite easy to replicate during the different years. It's not time consuming. It's very important to get information from managers of the site, scientific institutions, experts, and other people who know the site. Maybe it could be important to set up some meetings to gather this information. Maintain conservation action and increase dialogue with all stakeholders involved in the management of the site. This is a very important point. Lobby for compliance with the management plans and try to avoid any threats as far as possible, because we have realized that the problems of Doñana has been quickly from low years. So, and communicate and distribute the fact sheets as a result of this project by media such as social networks. This could be a very important point. And this would be the two facts for Doñana in 2007 and in 2020, which would summarize the data obtained after applying the Wetland Index. So this is the results for Doñana, and we can use for social media to know the problems in Doñana regarding this methodology, the Wetland Index. So that's all. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Octavio. Incredible how the site changed during just 13 years. We now have 10 minutes for questions. I know that some people is waiting for the questions. At least we have a question from Muslim. So if you want to open your mic, just go ahead. We're waiting for you.
Okay. The area is a protected area, then how come the state allows such tourist development as you've shown in your presentation? Probably the same as anywhere in the world where there's enough corporate pressure for development and economic development, is that it can be permitted, or sometimes things can be developed without permission. They're seen as an economic gain. There's not a very strong regulatory process in place for this, for development, urban development in that area especially. So it could, yeah, I mean, there's no great answer, only that there's a flaw in the system. Perhaps that there's an opportunity for some kind of ministerial approval which trumps the planning system, or the planning system is just not strong enough.
Thank you, Liz. We have a question from Muslim, but it's having problems with the Mac. So if you want, you can write it down and we can read it later here. Why there are many gaps on losing data from Algeria? Anis.
Gaps for the pilot sites, you mean, or because we had selected this pilot sites at the beginning to work on implementing the Wetland Index in the framework of the project, but as it was said, there are pilot sites, and the aim is to upscale this approach for many other sites. At the Mediterranean Wetlands Observatory, we had already discussed this, and we can provide additional data for more than 300 sites. This is what we will do probably in the coming months and years together with BirdLife. However, the implementation of the Wetland Index needs also other data in addition to the Earth observation and satellite derived data. So yeah, we need to find the site managers and the people that could work with the species data, that could assess also the threats and the trends in situ. So all this information should be gathered from these sites, and of course adding new sites from other countries is the objective, and having a broader coverage of all the Mediterranean countries, coastal wetlands, but also we can work on inland wetlands, as I said, is the objective for the coming years.
If I can just add to what Anis was saying, yeah, actually, I'm reading the Mediterranean Wetlands Outlook, and basically the largest areas of wetlands are in Egypt, in France, Turkey, and Algeria. So, of course, for us, it would be a pleasure to be able to work on those countries and, you know, to get data from the site managers and to support this effort in these countries that are absolutely key for the protection of wetlands in the Mediterranean.
We have another question from Liz Otton. What is the approximate cost to run a wetland index assessment for a site? Sofia, do you want to answer that?
I think it would be better if the site leaders talk about their experiences in the different countries.
Sophia, if I can jump,
Yeah, of course.
Go ahead.
The question regarding the cost, it's dependent on the data you have. If you need to collect data for the years that you need to assess, of course, you need to have money to do it. If you already have the data, for example, satellite data, birds data, information regarding the threats, it's easier to assess the site health. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think for most of the organizations that we were working with, they already had some kind of monitoring plan integrated into their workload. So for them, it was easier, and it was part of your organization monitoring, regular monitoring of the sites. So yeah, I guess it will depend on the country, but I don't know if any of you have like numbers on the effort this could.
I can say for Buna that yeah, it's hard to put the euro figure on it right now, but the big things that is collecting the land use, land change data. So that was provided, which was great. Then you have to check that the land habitat quality and the land change that validate that data, and then have some monitoring of the species of the birds. So we were lucky that there's already a bird census every year. So bird data I can get for free from the university. And then there's our time compiling.
Thank you, Liz. We have another question. Octavio, do you want to add something? Your mic is not working again, I'm sorry. Or do you want to answer the next one? Could the Wetland Index methodology be used to assess other IBS and KBAs?
Of course. Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes, you can use this methodology to assess other IBAs or KBAs. Yeah, it's very easy. Or in the question, if I can, in the case of the Bahía de Cádiz in Spain, we don't have enough data to put in place the methodology, and we had organized a meeting so to gather the information with university experts and so on. It was called because you can organize the meeting through the Zoom, so it's quite easy to gather the data.
Thank you, Octavio.
And just a quick comment on, I think the most expensive part would be the land use land cover change analysis that is done by Tuvala. And they already have a lot of information for these 320 wetlands in the Med. So of course, yeah, I need to have some time, staff time to dedicate to this, and this can be funded through projects. So there are opportunities for collaboration, but most of the data is already there. So yeah, I would invite you to contact us and check if we can provide you the data already.
Yeah, thank you, Sophia. That's what I wanted to add is also regarding the data used. Most of them are available, and the satellite images are free of charge. So they are all freely available, and we have information for many wetlands. And also to jump to the other question, the methodology, at least for the land use land cover changes, is perfectly adaptable and could be replicated for other sites that are not wetlands, IBS and KBS that are not wetlands, wetland sites. So yeah, the answer is yes for at least the land use land cover change monitoring.
Thank you, all of you. We are perfect on time. And if we have no more questions, and we will have another 10 minutes at the end, our next speaker is Mujib from Garel Mela. Go ahead.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm sharing my screen.
Okay. Mujib was really happy this morning because it was sunny. You know, Mujib, that it's not sunny anymore in Cambridge. It was just 2 hours. We can see your screen, but not in the full screen mode.
It's coming.
Waiting.
Good now.
No, not yet. Now, perfect.
Okay, thank you. Dear colleague, dear participant, good morning, wherever you are. I am Mujib Gabous, project coordinator working for Association Les Amis des Oiseaux. It's the BirdLife partner in Tunisia. As Sophia highlighted, the wetlands are very precious places for species, but also for people, and both depend on the health of these wetlands. And faced with the global environmental crisis, we need to find innovative solution to reduce the loss of wetlands and the service they provide. So the Wetland Index is one of these solutions. And in the following, I will present the work that have been done in Ghar al-Malh with the financial support of MAVA Foundation. Ghar al-Malh is a wetland located in the northeast of Tunisia. The region has a high ecological value because of its natural landscape, biodiversity, and habitats. These assets, in fact, allowed Ghar al-Malh to have several classifications at the international level. Ghar al-Malh is a wetland of international importance recognized by the Ramsar Convention since 2007. Ghar al-Malh is also a key biodiversity area since 2016. And in 2018, Ghar al-Malh obtained the City of Wetlands label and became the first Arab and North African city in the list of Ramsar cities. Ghar al-Malh provide shelters to many bird species. Some of them are endangered, such as Eurasian curlew and Odwin gulls. And it houses other species of international importance as spoonbill, greater flamingo, slender-billed gull. Unfortunately, the pressure on the site are very high, scored -3 according to the Wetland Index of Ghar al-Malh. And the main pressure are urban development and tourism, as well as fishing and hunting. Climate change related threats are also highly affecting the site, as well as pollution from effluent and wastewater. Finally, there is also alien species significantly affect the biodiversity in the area. It's about the blue crabs invasion in Ghar al-Malh. Okay, now let's take a look at some land use, land cover data to better understand the types of habitats affected by the pressure I already mentioned. Here, if we compare data from 2020 and 1990, we clearly see that all the habitats are of poor or moderate quality. For example, the percentage of built-up area has increased at the expense of natural wetlands and natural drylands. Also, globally, the water surface suffered a significant loss of 57% compared to the reference year. Forests are also degraded. Marine habitat, shrublands, and the grassland present better condition in Ghar al-Malh. Regarding the condition of species, I would like to highlight that a total of 20 trigger bird species are monitoring by the Wetland Index. The reference population that we considered in the Wetland Index is the one surveyed in 2013, and this because it's the most representative year. We compare data from 2020 and 2013. We notice that the condition is very unfavorable for 40% of trigger species and unfavorable for 60% of trigger species. This is why the state of habitats and species is very unfavorable and remain unchanged, +0 score. In response to these different pressure, conservation action have been carried out in Ghar al-Milh, and the response is scored +2. It's medium response according to the Wetland Index. Indeed, the various designation of the site, Ramsar site, key biodiversity area, wetland city, have had a positive impact on the site, helped advocating for national protection and fundraising. In the framework of the project we carried out in Ghar al-Milh, we developed key element that form the basis of the management plan, like the carrying capacity of Ghar al-Milh, the lagoon, the mountain, and the beach, monitoring protocol, ecosystem service assessment, and all these elements will feed the management plan, will form a good basis to update the management plan of Ghar al-Milh. Regarding the conservation action, many activity was done in Ghar al-Milh to reduce pollution and tourism affecting birds' habitats, monitoring of birds and threats, local authority engagement and empowerment. We work a lot with the local authority, and some agreement was signed with some of them, like municipality, forest department, to better engagement of these actors. Also, GEMWET partner equipped the local authority and the fishermen with tools and materials for better impact. For example, WWF equipped the fishermen with traps and nets to hunt the blue crabs, which is an invasive species. Okay. If we take into consideration and combine the scores of pressure, state, and response, we obtain an annual score for the site, which is -1 for 2020. The next step is to work with the local authority, especially to implement the conservation action and to implement the results of the assessment that was done in Ghar al-Milh, especially to reduce water and soil-based pollution, advocacy to take into consideration the assessment that have been done, carrying capacity, to ban anarchic construction on the coast, to implement the monitoring protocol and wetland index by the local authority, to establish program for the conservation of species and their habitat. And regarding the perspective of the wetland index, I think it is very important to take into consideration the future other taxa for example, plant to be integrated in the wetland index. This will help to monitor other taxa, and we will be able to have other indicator about the health of the site. Thank you very much. That's all. Here is a photo of the first meeting of the advisory commission of Ghar al-Milh discussing monitoring biodiversity, and this is a kind of anchorage that we need to have on the sites for better sustainability of our activity. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Mujib. It's really important to work closer with the local community, so congrats. Our next speaker is Giorgio from Oristano. Mujib, maybe you already stopped sharing your screen now. But...
Okay.
No. So Giorgio, go ahead.
Thanks, Joanna. I'm going to share my screen.
Perfect.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to present now the result of the activities carried out in the wetland area of Oristano by the working group of the MedSeal Foundation with the invaluable support of various stakeholder groups as a LIPU association. Sorry. Okay. The site is located in the central part of the west coast of Sardinia in Italy, and covers and the area extends over than 22,000 hectares, in which the use of the territory is mainly linked to agriculture, farming, fishing, and in lesser degree tourism and residential activities. The area is protected by a lot of regulatory tools, but which, as we will see shortly, are not always sufficient to guarantee its protection. The importance of the site is due in general to the high complexity of the lagoon, of the system of lagoons and ponds with a high natural and cultural value, strongly connected with the marine environment, high presence of birds, more than 160 species, a delicate coexistence between natural environment and human activities, notable archaeological evidence. For the main pressures identified in the sites are related to agricultural activities, which causes pollution due to agricultural effluents, fishing that sometimes carried out in the absence of adequate catch plans, tourism, which often represents a disturbing factor for birds, for example, and the climate change that periodically cause land management problems. In the bottom part, you can see the score of the pressure in the 3 years, to 2019, 2020, and to 2021. And here some picture of some pressure, floods, and breeding, which in the past caused problem with the accumulation of nitrates in some wetland area. Some fishing activities and climate and agricultures. Speaking of the state of habitats, especially in relation to the analysis of land use between 2020 and 1990, it is possible to find an increase of the building up areas, but in reality, it has almost stopped in the last 15 years to the detriment of natural areas and also agricultural. Among about animal species, 27 species of particular interest have been identified, species of birds, sorry, have been identified, whose status has slightly improved since 2019. The analysis of the summary framework of the responses, sorry. Okay, yes. The analysis of the framework of the responses had a good rating, high, and as over the 19% of the IBA is covered by conservation measures, and for the same area, there is a management plan linked to the Natura 2000 European Union directives. conservation action are implemented, but are often limited by the availability of economic resources. This is the summary framework that show the score for the 3 years, 2019, 2020, and 2021. And now we will working to achieve an homogeneous governance of the wetland of the Gulf of Oristano, and identify a formal management authority through the establishment of a regional park. The implementation, we implement a continuous monitoring system with the involvement of the local expert group, improve the conservation action. I can add also that in general, for the future, thanks to the experience achieved in the MAVA Foundation initiatives, we think it is important to capitalize the Maristanis project, disseminate the importance of the wetlands in the Sardinian school, consolidate the new governance model, and supporting the diffusion of circular economy innovative solution. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Giorgio. It's great to see that the trends of the site are pretty positive and that the MEDSI work is working at the site. We have now 10 minutes for questions. So if you want just to jump in, open your mic, ask. You can also write your questions in the chat. Go ahead, Taleb.
Good morning, everybody. I'm sorry, I'm a bit throaty because I've got a cold, so my voice maybe is unclear. But I would like to thank the organizers and the speakers. So my question is to Mujib about Ghar al-Milh. So the score is -1, is a bit strange. So do you think who's the key responsible to change this score to be better? The other question, do you have any action against the blue crab? Mujib, does it make sense? Mujib,
you are moved.
So, okay, I see now. So the first question is regarding the -1, why we have -1. That's it, Khaled. Can you please repeat your first question?
My first question is, who's the key, I mean, the main responsible to change the score?
So it's not a question of responsible, but it's the result of the sum of the different elements that constitute the wetland index. It means that it's a score given if we take into consideration the pressure, the statute, and the response. But maybe if there is a very strong response, we can change the site score because it's the response who can make better the site score. So that's okay, Khaled?
Yes, it is, but I'm not quite sure about the main responsible for Ghar al-Milh because I know the area. So is it the local authorities?
You mean yeah, there is 2 points. You mean by responsible the threats that make the score -1, or you mean by responsible the person who managing the site?
No. I mean the key agent or the main responsible to change the score.
It's
who
the response.
Did you think? Yeah.
It's the response, and the response is the conservation action that we are implementing in Ghar al-Milh, who can change the score.
Good.
Okay.
Okay, it makes sense. Okay.
And the second question was about?
Do you have an action plan against the blue crab?
Yes, there is an action led by the WWF, and it's they equipped the fishermen with traps and nets to reduce the blue crab proliferation on the lagoon. And the blue crabs are now commercialized in the market, and it's became beneficial for fishermen to hunt these blue crabs.
Good luck.
Thank you, Khaled. It's a great pleasure to see you here.
Me too.
Joanna, may I add something to Mujib's answer?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, thank you, Khaled, and it's also nice to see you here.
Anis, oh, I'm doing.
Yeah, thank you. Just to add a few comments on the answer provided by Mujib, to improve the score. Of course, we need to improve the responses, and it's not only on the conservation, on improving the conservation measures, but also we are working on the at the larger scale. If you look at the Ghar al-Malih, it's connected. So all these coastal wetlands are not disconnected from their watershed. So improving the management, especially the water management at the watershed scale, could also help to improve the condition of the wetlands, and therefore the increase the score of the wetland index. So there are also some actions to take into account, but at a wider scale, by taking into consideration the whole catchment, which is which is connected to the wetland. So, for example, in the case of Ghar al-Malih, so we should see what happened in the Majerda River Basin and connect these actions at the Majerda River Basin scale with the coastal wetland, which is the main outlet of the catchment.
Thank you, Anis. Great. We have another question in the chat from Christian. Will there be any guidebook, recite book, template form, etc., to assist anyone who wants to apply the wetland index in his own site? So I think that Sophia, you can answer this one if you want.
Thanks, Christian. Yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. Actually, we have an internal report in which we have captured all these experiences and we explain the methodology. But I think we need to produce something that is for the general public or whoever wants to apply the wetland index. So we will be doing this in the upcoming months for sure. And if any of you is ready to apply the wetland index, we already have the form, what we call the wetland index form. So it's a very easy template to fill in. It gives you the automatic scores, so you don't have to do anything. It's just fill in the template, and we can of course support you with the fact sheets. But yes, you will hear from us if you're interested in the upcoming months, and we will be sharing this guidance. Thank you, Christian.
Anis, do you want to add something?
Yes, regarding this handbook or guidebook, I think, thank you, Sophia. I think that it's very good to have it by the end of the project, and also in order to reach as much wetland practitioners as possible, we need also to have it in translated format, at least for French and Spanish or Arabic as well, to have have the possibility to work with the wetland practitioners that are not maybe English speaking in the Mediterranean basin.
Great. We have another question in the chat from Dominic. What is the additional value of wetland index compared to conventional SPA monitoring in the EU states?
Yeah, maybe we can jump in here. So yeah, I think for me, the wetland index is something that it's a bit more flexible, maybe, and we can, of course, apply this in an annual basis. So usually, that the EU monitoring from SPAs comes every now and then, and you have to wait for a number of years. So this allows site managers to be more on top of the pressures and act accordingly. So I think we can act swiftly by using this wetland index monitoring, but of course, both frameworks can be compatible. And actually, I think is a good idea to compare them and to see if there are any gaps. Of course, there is no perfect methodology. There's always something that needs to be improved, or there will be some gaps. So yeah, I think that's my views on that. I don't know if any of you, maybe Octavio, you're familiar with SPA monitoring, and you can add something else on this question. Thank you, Dominic.
No.
Maybe now.
Now, yeah.
No, the answer, Sofia, is good. I think this methodology is more flexible and permit to act for other stakeholders instead of the administration. So you can gather information from others. So it's more flexible. This is the main thing. Yeah.
Thank you. Do we have any other questions from the audience? We still have 2 minutes if you want to ask something. If not, I would like to know that, Octavio is already talking. So I would like to know if you are going to use these fact sheets, or how do you think that you can use these fact sheets to communicate about wetland issues with the general public, local authorities, and discuss conservation aspects? Again?
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I don't know why this, sorry. The fact sheets have a lot of communication possibilities. They have a lot of information concentrated in a small space thanks to the development of the easy to implement methodology, as discussed during this webinar. Therefore, these fact sheets can be used to bring the need for conservation of these wetlands. And at the same time, as the methodology is very simple, it can be developed by the different actors, stakeholders that influence the different sites over a number of years, of different years. This could be important, and which makes it possible to observe the evolution and to check if the management plan are working, because we have a lot of management plan, but now we have to know the efficiency, the effective of this management plan. So this fact is, it could be good for communication possibilities, yeah.
Thank you, great. So if we have no more questions, we are going to finish the webinar now. Thank you all for being here. I hope that you like it. We are going to send you the recording, and I think that someone, I thought it was Marianne, asked me for the presentation, so we'll organize it and we will share with you all the information. If you need something, if you want to get in touch with us, just send us an email to Sofia or me. We will organize everything. Thank you so much for being here, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Have a nice day.
organizing.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.